Welcome to Untold History. Today, in the sixth and final chapter of our Samurai and Blood series, we'll examine the legacy of the unification of Japan. It wasn't just a military victory. It was the beginning of a regime that would last more than 2 centuries. A regime of order, hierarchy, and peace, but also of confinement, control, and stagnation. Today, we explore the real legacy of the shogunate. Tokugawa, Japan in the Edo period. The Battle of Sekigahara, the proclamation of the shogunate, and the death of Ieyasu marked the beginning of a new era. The Edo period, which lasted from 1603 to 1868, was one of the longest and most stable in the history of any country. Japan went from being a fragmented chessboard of feudal lords, armed temples, and perpetual wars, to becoming a centralized, deeply hierarchical and carefully managed political structure, all under the watchful eye of the Tokugawa family. The capital was Edo, known today as Tokyo, a city that grew at a dizzying pace. From a small swampy town, it became one of the most populated cities in the world. With orderly streets, specialized neighborhoods, canals and bridges, shops and markets. The peace allowed urban culture to flourish. The political system rested on 3 fundamental pillars. Control of the daimyo. With the Sankin system kotai, feudal lords were required to alternate their residence between their lands and Edo. During their absence, their families remained hostages. This prevented conspiracies and forced them to spend enormous sums on maintaining double residences and lavish processions. Rigid social stratification. The population was divided into 4 classes: samurai, rulers, peasants, producers, artisans, creators, and merchants, distributors. Ironically, the merchants, although legally inferior, became economically powerful as trade flourished like never before. External isolation. The regime feared the influence of foreign powers. Christianity was banned. Trade relations with Europe were severely restricted. Only the Dutch, because of their religious neutrality, were able to maintain a small trading port on the artificial island of Dejima in Nagasaki. This was called Sakoku, the country closed. For more than 200 years, Japan lived without internal wars. There were no samurai rebellions. There were no foreign invasions. Order was everything. Confucian morality, obedience to authority, and respect for hierarchy were promoted. But that order came at a price. The samurai, deprived of war, were transformed into impoverished bureaucrats. They lived off their lord's stipends, but without a clear function. Their role, once glorious, was diluted in the present. Peasants suffered high taxes. And merchants, though wealthy, were despised by the elite. Culturally, however, the Edo period was a time of great creativity. New art forms emerged: kabuki, ukiyo, woodblock prints, haiku poetry, and folk literature. Urban life in Edo, Kyoto, and Osaka gave rise to an educated middle class devoted to theater, aesthetics, and entertainment. But in the meantime, the world was changing. Europe was entering the age of revolutions, global exploration, and industrialization. The United States was growing, and Japan continued to look inward. In 1853, an event would break the isolation: the arrival of the black ships of Commodore Matthew Perry of the United States. With modern cannons and ruthless diplomacy, he demanded the opening of Japanese ports to Western trade. The shogunate, weakened and without options, gave in. The forced opening created an internal earthquake. The Tokugawa's authority was called into question. New ideas emerged: modernization, constitutionalism, nationalism. The order inherited from Ieyasu began to crumble. In 1868, with the Meiji Restoration, the shogunate was abolished. Power returned to the emperor, and Japan entered the modern age. But the legacy of the Edo period is ambivalent. On the one hand, it was a time of peace, art, stability, and social cohesion. On the other, it was one of repression, technological stagnation, and international isolation. It was, in short, the price of unification. Because that dream initiated by Nobunaga, continued by Hideyoshi, and consolidated by Ieyasu, was not a dream of freedom. It was a dream of absolute order, of perfect control. And although it lasted for centuries, it could not resist change. Thus ends our Samurai and Blood series. A story of swords and castles, of betrayals and pacts, but also of the most human, the desire for power, for permanence, and for peace. Thank you for joining us for this new episode of Untold History. If you enjoyed the content, we invite you to subscribe, leave your comments, and share it with those who love history as much as you do. We continue to reconstruct the past, one story at a time. See you next time.